Now, before discussing the actual topic, we will briefly review the key points of the previous lectures which you have attended in the foundation module. You are very well aware that carbohydrates are polyhydroxyaldehyde or ketones or compounds which are derived from these. Compounds containing 3 to 9 carbon atoms are called monosaccharides. The larger compounds are formed by the condensation of monosaccharides through the glycosidic linkage. Remember that in carbohydrates we have a covalent bond that is called as the glycosidic linkage which is formed between two monosaccharides. A disaccharide consists of two monosaccharides linked by a single glycosidic linkage. Similarly, a trisaccharide is a three monosaccharides linked by the two glycosidic bond and etc. When we use the word oligo or polysaccharide, it means the carbohydrates up to 10 monomers are oligosaccharides, and when they are in hundreds or in thousand units, then they are respectively called as the polysaccharides. Since many carbohydrates have a sweet taste, that's why they are referred to as sugars. Now, why carbohydrates are so important for human beings? Because they are the major source of energy and they are the stored form of fuel. As far as the insoluble carbohydrates are concerned, they serve as a structural and protective elements in the cell wall of the bacteria and the plant, and they are the part of the connective tissue in animals and human beings. Carbohydrate polymers lubricate skeletal joints. They participate in recognition and adhesion between cells. Complex carbohydrates, when they conjugate with proteins and lipids, they are called as glycoproteins and glycolipids. These glycoproteins and glycolipids, since they are present on the surface of the cell membrane, so they have a role in the signal transduction. As component of the extracellular matrix, carbohydrates give shape and provide protection, support to the cell, tissues and the organs. And you are very well aware that cellulose is a major dietary fiber and which is a component of the balanced diet. From the sequence of monosaccharides of glycoproteins and glycolipids, one can determine the blood group of the individual. And you are very well aware that the pentose sugars, the ribose in the form of ribose and deoxyribose, they are the components of the nucleotides, which are the structural components of DNA and RNA. Now, all these functions we have just discussed are made possible because of characteristic chemical features of the carbohydrate. And among these chemical features, the most important one is that existence of at least one or often two or more asymmetric carbon atom or asymmetric centers. We will discuss it later on. And then the ability of the sugar to exist either in linear or ring structure, and its ability to form polymers via glycosidic bonds. And carbohydrates are capable to form multiple hydrogen bonds with water or with the molecules in their environment. The first chemical feature of the monosaccharide was the presence of asymmetric carbon atom or chiral centers. Now, you are very well aware that the simplest sugar is the glyceraldehyde, and glyceraldehyde is an aldose sugar, whereas the dihydroxyacetone is a keto sugar. So, all monosaccharides except dihydroxyacetone, they contain several asymmetric carbon atom. Now, what is an asymmetric carbon atom or chiral carbon? When a carbon atom has four different groups or substituents attached to it, it is said to be a asymmetric carbon atom or chiral center. A molecule with one asymmetric carbon atom can exist only in two stereoisomeric forms, but when it has two or more asymmetric carbon atoms, then the stereoisomers can be calculated by 2 multiplied with the n number of stereoisomers. Some stereoisomers are mirror images of each other, that's why they are called as enantiomers. So, what are enantiomers? Enantiomers are the mirror images of each other. The simplest sugar, the glyceraldehyde, it contains one asymmetric carbon atom, so therefore it has two different optical isomers or enantiomers. Now, what are isomers? Isomers are molecules with the same formula but they have a different structures. Isomers can be again divided into two basic classes: constitutional isomers, when they are mainly concerned with the structure, and stereoisomers, when the isomers differ only in 3D shape. These stereoisomers can again be subclassified into those with the asymmetric carbon atoms and those without the asymmetric carbon atoms. Now remember, this configuration is based on two things. We have already discussed that the existence of the asymmetric carbon atom, and number two, the presence of the double bond. Around which no freedom of movement is possible. So when this configuration is based on the presence of the double bond, then it can be either in the cis or the trans form, and we will discuss it in the topic of the lipid chemistry. Uh, on the basis of this asymmetric carbon atom, these stereoisomers are again divided into enantiomers, which we have just discussed that they are the mirror images of each other, and diastereomers, they are not mirror images of each other. So this is the basic classification of isomers. As we just discussed, that stereoisomers are the compounds that have the same molecular formula and same bonding pattern, but they differ in spatial arrangement of atom in the molecule. Enantiomers, we have just discussed, they are the mirror images of each other, and they exist either in the D or L isomeric form. Distereoisomers, as we discussed earlier, that they are not the mirror images of each other, and they include the epimers and the anomers. And we have optical isomers, those small compounds that have the same physical properties, but they can rotate the polarized light in opposite direction. They are called as optical isomers. Now this slide tells you the difference between the structural and optical isomers. Structural isomers are different structures of the same chemical formula, whereas the optical isomers are different mirror images of the same structure. Now you are very well aware with the definition of the asymmetric carbon atom. An asymmetric carbon atom is one to which the four different groups are attached. You can see here glyceraldehyde, as I told you earlier, it is the simplest sugar, an aldose sugar, and it has a 3 carbon structure, and you can see the carbon number 2 has got different groups attached to it. On one side it has got a hydroxyl group, on other side it has an aldehyde group, and on one side you can see a hydrogen atom is attached, and on that side you can see the CH2H group is attached. So glyceraldehyde has a one asymmetric carbon atom. Again I will repeat, an asymmetric carbon atom or chiral centers or chiral carbons are carbon to which the four different groups are attached. Now if you concentrate on this hydroxyl group, which is attached to the carbon number 2 of the glyceraldehyde, when it exists on the right side of the sugar, it is called D-glyceraldehyde. And we are very well aware that when the one asymmetric carbon atom, then it can exist only in two stereoisomeric form, and these are the mirror images of each other. Here on L glyceraldehyde, you can see this hydroxyl group is on the left side. So we designate glyceraldehyde as D or L on the basis of the OH group attached to the asymmetric carbon atom, whether it is on the right side or on the left side. When it is on the right side, we will say D-glyceraldehyde, and when it is on the left side of the asymmetric carbon atom, it will be called as the L-glyceraldehyde. So one asymmetric carbon atom and two stereoisomeric forms are possible. Uh, Glucose is considered as a standard sugar. Now, if we consider this glucose molecule and we want to see the number of asymmetric carbon atom present in the glucose molecule, we can see from here, and we can self-judge that a 6 carbon structure can have 4 asymmetric carbon atom. Now you can see this is carbon number 2. On one side it has got this aldehyde group attached, on other side the hydroxyl group, on one side it has the hydro H group, and the remaining this whole group is attached to it. So similarly, if we'll go to carbon number 3, carbon number 4 and carbon number 5. So a 6 carbon sugar, the glucose can have 4 different asymmetric carbon atoms. You can see from here, this is carbon number 5. If we'll consider this whole structure as 1, and then we can see then this hydroxyl group on the right side, H group on the left side, and we have this. So a 6 carbon sugar, when it exists in a linear form, it has 4 asymmetric carbon atom. And from this you can see this is again L glucose and D glucose. Why it is being labeled as L and D glucose? You can see they are mirror images of each other. So what are these? These are enantiomers. And just see on the basis, if a sugar has 6 carbon structure, then we will just concentrate on the carbon number 5, which is also called as the penultimate carbon atom, and we will look at the position of the OH group. Now in this, here you can see the OH group is on the right side of the glucose molecule, so it will be labeled as D glucose. And if you see over here, this is the OH group is attached on the left side of the glucose, so it is being labeled as L glucose. So the two optical isomers L and D glucose, how we have decided they are L or D? On the basis of the OH group on the second last carbon atom, or the carbon number 5, which is also called as the penultimate carbon atom. Now these are the more examples of this optical isomers. You can see 5 carbon sugar, D ribose and L ribose, and they are mirror images of each other. Why D and L? Again, the position of OH group on the second last carbon atom. Similarly, we have 5 carbon sugar arabinose, and it is D arabinose and L arabinose. Now these are also called optical isomers because they rotate, these molecules rotate the plane polarized light in opposite direction when they are present in solution form. Now if you recall, in the previous slides we said that when a molecule has one asymmetric carbon atom, it can exist in 2 isomeric form, and we have just seen that the glucose has 4 asymmetric carbon atoms. So one can estimate how many stereoisomeric form can exist. So in case of glucose, it is 2 multiplied with the n number of the asymmetric carbon atoms. So you can see the 16 different isomeric forms of glucose which can exist. So one glucose molecule can have 16 different stereoisomeric forms, and these are, you can see these are different 16 different forms of glucose molecule on the basis of 4 asymmetric carbon atom. We have already discussed the definition of distereoisomers. Distereoisomers, they are not the mirror images of each other, and they are called epimers when they differ in spatial arrangement around one specific carbon atom. If we consider glucose as a standard sugar, then you can see here that mannose and galactose, they are also 6 carbon sugar. Now consider the structure of glucose, and you can see the galactose is different from glucose around carbon number 4. You just see the arrangement that in glucose the OH group is on the right side, but in case of galactose, the OH group at carbon number 4 is on the left side. So galactose differ from glucose at carbon number 4. The spatial arrangement of atoms around carbon number 4 is different from glucose. Similarly, mannose is also a hexose sugar, and you can see it differ from glucose at carbon number 2. Just concentrate on this, that in glucose the OH group is on the right side, whereas in case of mannose it is on the left side. So mannose is an epimer of glucose at carbon number 2, and galactose is an epimer of glucose at carbon number 4. So these they have the same structure formula, but they differ from each other around arrangement of atoms at one specific carbon atom. So now you are very well familiar with the definition of epimers. Now we will discuss the structure of monosaccharides under these 4 headings as Fischer projection. As far as the Fischer projection is concerned, for understanding purpose, we do write the formula in a linear form. But in solutions, the sugars don't exist in the linear form. They assume a cyclic structure, and this cyclic structure is based on the formation of the hemiacetal or hemiketal linkage, which is an intramolecular linkage. And then we will also discuss it under the heading of Haworth structure and conformational structure. Now, hemiacetal linkages are formed when we talk about the aldose sugar, and hemiketal linkage is formed when we consider a keto sugar, which is the fructose or dihydroxyacetone. So these two linkages, hemiacetal and hemiketal linkages, they are intramolecular linkage, and because of these intramolecular linkages, the sugars in solution, they assume a cyclic structure. So what is these hemiacetal and hemiketal linkages? These are intramolecular linkages. Now if we consider an aldose sugar is characterized by the presence of aldehyde group at carbon number 1, and this is the hydroxyl group at carbon number 5 of the same sugar molecule, OH group. That's why it is being written as alcohol, hydroxyl group. So in the same molecule, the aldehyde group, the carbon number 1 of the aldehyde group interacts with the hydroxyl group at carbon number 5 of the glucose molecule by means of a hemiacetal linkage, and they assume a cyclic structure. Similarly, we know that the carbon number 2 in case of carbon keto sugar, the functional group is on carbon number 2, that is the carbonyl carbon, and this carbon number 2 of the keto sugar reacts with the OH group at the carbon number 6 of the keto sugar and form a hemiketal linkage. So remember that hemiacetal and hemiketal linkages are intramolecular structure, and because of these the sugars can assume a 6-member ring structure or 5-member ring structure. Now in the previous slide we discussed about the hemiacetal and the hemiketal linkage, and you can see here the linear form of the glucose structure, the 6-carbon structure, that is called the Fischer projection. And you can see here this hemiacetal linkage is being shown, that carbon 1 of the glucose molecule, which has the aldehyde group attached to it, reacts with that of the OH group at the second last carbon atom or the carbon number 5 of the glucose molecule, and a hemiacetal linkage is formed. As a result of this hemiacetal linkage, it assumes a cyclic structure. Now this is very important point, that previously we said that if we consider the linear form of the glucose molecule, it has 4 asymmetric carbon atom. And what is an asymmetric carbon atom? A carbon atom to which the 4 different groups are attached. Now because of this hemiacetal linkage and the hemiketal linkage, this carbon number 1 of the glucose molecule now become a asymmetric carbon atom. So as a result of this, when the sugar is in the cyclic form, we have another asymmetric carbon atom, that is the carbon number 1, and because of this carbon number 1 on the presence of this OH group at carbon number 1, we will discuss in the next slide, we have another form of isomerism, so that is called as the in anomers. From this slide, you will be able to understand the another form of isomerism that is called the anomers. Now, this is Fisher projection, the linear form of the glucose formula written. And we know that carbon number 1 is not a asymmetric carbon atom. But when an hemiacetal linkage is formed between carbon 1 and the carbon number 5 of the OH group of the carbon number 5 of the sugar molecule, it assumes a cyclic structure. And now concentrate on this carbon number 1. This carbon number 1 has now become an asymmetric carbon atom, and just concentrate the position of OH group at carbon number 1. If the OH group position of OH group is below the line level of the carbon number 1, it is called alpha glucose. But if you see here in this structure, it is above the level of the carbon number 1, then it is called the beta glucose. So another form of isomerism exists when the sugars, as a result of the formation of the hemiacetal linkage, that is the alpha and the beta anomers. So what is an anomer? An anomer is an epimer at the hemiacetal and acetyl carbon in the cyclic sugar structure. So it is again what is an epimer? Epimer, they differ in arrangement of atoms at one specific carbon atom. So our carbon here is the carbon number 1, and just on the basis of the presence of this OH group above or below the level of the carbon 1, they will be labeled as alpha glucose or beta D glucose. Now, as a result of hemiacetal or hemiketal linkages, the sugars, they may assume a 5th member ring structure, or they may form a 6 member ring structure. This 5 member ring structure is called furan, and the 6 member ring structure is called pyrene. Now here you can see the example of the keto sugar, the hexo keto sugar, that is the fructose, the sweetest sugar. And we know that the functional group of this keto sugar is carbon number 2, the carbonyl carbon at carbon number 2. And you can see a hemiketal linkage is formed between the carbon number 2 of this fructose with the OH group at carbon number 5 of the same molecule. And as a result of this, it can assume a beta or alpha anomeric form. This is, you just concentrate on this group. You can see the OH group is below the level of the carbon number 2. So that's why it is alpha D glucose. Why it is called D? Because we can see here that the OH group on the second last carbon atom is on the right side. So it is D fructose. First we label it D fructose. Then on the basis of this OH group below the level of carbon number 2, it is alpha. Alpha D fructose furanose, because it forms 6 member ring structure. So now you can understand how we the nomenclature, that on the basis of OH group on the right side of the second last carbon atom, it is D fructose, and when it assumes a cyclic structure, it forms a 6 member ring structure, and on the basis of OH group at carbon number 2 below the level of carbon number 2, it is alpha D fructofuranose. And just concentrate over here, the OH group is on level of the above the level of the carbon number 2, so it is beta D fructofuranose. So this is how we discuss this structures under the heading of Haworth structure. The ring structure can assume a boat shape structure or chair shape structure, that is conformational structure. So this is alpha D glucose pyranose, and it is beta D glucopyranose. Now monosaccharides, they may undergo a different type of reactions. Among these reactions, we will discuss the butarotation, oxidation reduction reaction, isomerization, esterification, and we will discuss how the glycosidic bonds are formed in the next slides. Sugars are reducing substance. We will discuss this reducing property in the next few slides. And what happens then when sugar reacts with some other molecules, they reduce that molecule and sugar themselves become oxidized. When sugars are oxidized, they convert into sugar acids. Now this is our standard glucose molecule. You can see here we have considered glucose as a standard, and we know that at carbon number 1 it has got a aldehyde group is attached. So when this aldehyde group is oxidized, then it convert into a gluconic acid. So you can see here the carbon number 1 of the aldehyde group is oxidized to carboxylic group, and this glucose is no more a glucose, it will be called as gluconic acid. So remember one thing, when sugars are oxidized, they form sugar acids. So on the basis of the number of carbon atom which is oxidized, the nomenclature is based. So when carbon number 1 is oxidized, it is called gluconic acid. When carbon number 6 is oxidized, it is called glucuronic acid. So, and if both the carbon 1 and the carbon number 6 of the glucose is oxidized, it is called glucaric acid. So remember one thing, sugars, all monosaccharides and disaccharides except sucrose, they are reducing sugars, and when they react with some molecules, they reduce that molecule and themselves they become oxidized and form sugar acids. So carbon number 1 is oxidized, it is gluconic acid. When carbon number 6 is oxidized, it is glucuronic acid, and when both carbon number 1 and 6 of the glucose molecule oxidized, it is called glucaric acid. Another slide showing you the same reaction, reaction of the glucose molecule, and it has been shown with this red box that aldehyde group is oxidized to carboxyl group and it is called gluconic acid, and D-gluconic acid because OH group is on the right side, so it is D-glucose, and it was when oxidized it is converted into D-gluconic acid. This is glucuronic acid when the carbon number 6 is oxidized, and when carbon 1 and carbon 6 are oxidized, they are called as glucaric acids. Glucuronic acid, when it is being heated, it assumes a cyclic structure, and that is called the glucuronolactone, and this glucuronolactone is a component of nearly all connective tissue. Now this is again the structure of glucuronolactone. You can see here that in previous slide we have seen that how glucuronic acid is converted into a cyclic structure, that is glucuronolactone. Uronic acids are the class of compound which are derived from the oxidation of sugars. And when the sugar is glucose, it is being glucuronic acid. So two uronic acids are important in human beings and animals. One is the D-glucuronic acid and its epimeric form, that is the L-iduronic acid. Now this glucuronic acid is very important in a sense that when it combines with any molecule or compound, it converts it into a water soluble form. So it helps in detoxification of the various metabolic waste products like drugs, bilirubin, steroids, and this whole process takes place in the liver. So liver has a major function in the detoxification of the various metabolites and the compounds or drugs. And this uronic acid is also an important component of the connective tissue, and they are the structural component of the GAGs. GAGs are the glycosaminoglycans and proteoglycans. So we will, in the next lecture, we will discuss about the GAGs and the proteoglycans, and we will also discuss the difference between the GAGs and the proteoglycans. At this level, just know that GAGs are the sugar part of the proteoglycans. They are made up of repeating disaccharide units, and proteoglycans when they have GAGs plus protein part. So uronic acids have a very important role in detoxification, and especially the glucuronic acid. Iduronic acid are the component of a number of the this connective tissue elements. The another type of reaction which the sugars encounter is esterification. This esterification is a process by which the phosphoric acid reacts with the OH group of the sugar molecule, and this reaction of phosphoric acid, definitely they are acidic in nature, they have the negatively charged molecules, so they change the chemical and the physical properties of that molecule when they form ester linkages with the sulfates and the phosphate. So phosphate and sulfate, they combine to the sugar by means of an ester linkage. So esterification indicates that the phosphoric acid or sulfates, they are attached to the sugar molecule by means of the ester linkage, and these they are since negatively charged, so what they do, they change their physical and the chemical properties. The phosphorylated derivatives are important metabolic component. When sugar, they are converted into glycogen, they convert into glucose 1-phosphate, or when they are being oxidized, they convert into glucose 6-phosphate. So they are important metabolic components in breakdown or in the synthesis of the sugars. And sulfate esters, they are the component of the proteoglycans. And remember one thing, I have just told you the difference between GAGs and the proteoglycans. GAGs are the carbohydrate part of the proteoglycans, and when we say proteoglycans, it means it is protein plus glycose aminoglycans, and they are the component of the connective tissue. You are all already familiar with this this term connective tissue. Connective tissue are the ground substance or cementing agents, and they are the combination of the GAGs, proteoglycans, and that of the structural proteins. Now here you can see we have the ring structure of this fructose, and you can see the carbon 1 of the fructose is phosphorylated. You can see the phosphate has a highly negatively charged molecule, so it is fructose 1-phosphate. When phosphate is attached at carbon number 1 of the this fructose structure, it is fructose 1-phosphate, and you can see here it is the carbon number 6 of the fructose, and the phosphate residue is attached to this, so it is fructose 6-phosphate. Similarly, it is possible that the carbon 1 and carbon 6 of the fructose can get phosphorylated, and then it forms fructose 1,6-bisphosphate, which is one of the important intermediate of the glycolysis pathway. So phosphorylation of fructose at position 1, at position 6, and both at 1 and 6. So these are various forms of the esters of sugar esters. One of the property of the sugars, as I have told you earlier, that sugars, all monosaccharides and disaccharides except sucrose, they are reducing sugars. They can reduce the another compound, and themselves they become oxidized and form sugar acids. So in an alkaline medium, these sugars, they undergo, there is a shift of this double bond. So you can see here that in when we in Benedict's we perform Benedict's test for the reducing properties of sugar, and in an alkaline medium, sugars form the sugar anhydrol. So what happens in alkaline medium, there is a shift of the position of the double bond. You can see this is aldehyde group, and when this double bond is shift to between carbon 1 and carbon 2, you can see it convert into a sugar molecule which has got an hydroxyl group at carbon 1 as well as on carbon 2, whereas if we recall glucose structure, the linear form of glucose structure, it has aldehyde group at carbon 1 and it has got hydroxyl group at carbon 2. So this is 1,2 sugar anhydrol, that 1,2 sugar anhydrol, that carbon 1 and carbon 2 both have the alcohol group attached to its structure. Here you can see it is the aldehyde group, but because of the shift of this double bond, position of double bond from carbon 1 to between carbon 1 and carbon 2, it is converted this sugar into a sugar enediol. I will explain this in the next slide. Now this is D-glucose. You can see the aldehyde group. In the presence of an alkaline medium, there is a shift of this double bond from this aldehyde group to between carbon 1 and carbon 2, and it is converted into sugar enediol. You can see here the hydroxyl group at carbon 1 as well as also at carbon number 2. So this is called as 1,2-enediol, and it can then change into a keto sugar, that is a fructose. So again you can see this enediol formation can convert glucose into fructose. Now glucose and fructose, they are isomers. What are isomers? Isomers, they have the same formula but they differ in spatial arrangement of the atoms in a space. So sugars are reducing substance, and you can see that when glucose is converted into 1,2-enediol because of this shift of the position of the carbon double bond from carbonyl carbon to carbon 1 and carbon 2, it may convert into 1,2-enediol, and this 1,2-enediol is more reducing agent than the sugar itself, and it can then isomerize either to mannose or to fructose. So this isomerization can convert glucose into mannose and fructose. So mannose and fructose and glucose, they are isomers of each other, whereas the glucose, galactose and mannose, they are also epimers of each other. Epimers are those which differ from each other around arrangement at one specific carbon atom. This is the elaboration of the previous slide. We have the linear form of the D-glucose, and you can see here we have the aldehyde group attached to this, and we have the hydroxyl group at carbon number 2. As a result of this alkaline medium, it is converted into sugar enediol, and we have the 2-hydroxyl group at carbon 1 and as well as on the carbon number 2, and then it may isomerize to fructose or mannose. Now Benedict's test is one of the tests of the detection of carbohydrate, and this test predict whether the sugar is a reducing sugar or not. So we perform Benedict's test for the presence of reducing sugar, and it is the principle of also the glucometer. There we use, instead of this Benedict's reagent, we use the enzyme glucose oxidase, and both the glucometer and the Benedict's test assess the reducing property of the sugar. Now as far as the Benedict's reagent is concerned, it is comprised of copper sulfate, and it is we have sodium carbonate, which provide the alkaline medium, and sodium citrate. So this is the composition of the Benedict's reagent, and you are supposed to know the principle of the Benedict's test. So Benedict's reagent is comprised of copper sulfate, sodium carbonate, which act as an alkaline, provide an alkaline medium, and sodium citrate. Now what happens? The copper which is present in the, and it gives blue color to the Benedict's reagent, the copper is present in the oxidized form, that is the cupric form, and we know that sugars are reducing substance, and the presence, this reducing property of the sugar is based on the free carbonyl carbon, that is the aldehyde group in case of carbon number 1 of the glucose, and the carbonyl carbon in case of fructose, it is carbon number 2. So when there is a free aldehyde or ketone group is there, the sugar is a reducing sugar. So this aldehyde group, when we add sugar into the Benedict's reagent, this aldehyde group of the sugar is oxidized to carboxylic acid, and it reduces this cupric ions to the cuprous oxide, and this gives color to the Benedict's reagent. Depending upon the concentration of the sugar present, it may be green, blue, orange, or it may be red. So this Benedict's test assess the reducing property of the sugar. Sugar is oxidized to sugar acid, that is the when carbon number 1 of the glucose is oxidized, is called gluconic acid, remember. And the cupric ions are oxidized to cuprous are reduced to cuprous oxide. So this is the principle of the Benedict's test. This is the further elaboration of this Benedict's test. You can see the cupric ions, and we have this ring structure of the glucose, because in solution the sugars are in the cyclic form, and you can see it is carbon 1 is oxidized and it is converted into gluconic acid, and it is copper is reduced to cuprous oxide. In the glucometer, the strip is being impregnated with the enzyme glucose oxidase. So oxidases are those which remove electron from the substrate, and they reduces oxygen to hydrogen peroxide. So oxidases, and this then hydrogen peroxide then gives color to the dye which is present on the strip. So this is the principle of this strip used for assessment of the glucose in case of glucometer, and this is the reaction which you will observe and you will perform in the lab, that is the Benedict's test. Now, as I told you earlier that when it is being glucose formula is written in a linear form, it has 4 asymmetric carbon atoms. Asymmetric carbon atom or chiral centers are the carbon atom to which the 4 different groups are arranged. And in linear form, we have seen that glucose has 4 asymmetric carbon atoms, that is carbon number 2, 3, 4 and 5. But when in aqueous solution, they assume a cyclic form. So as a result of formation of hemiacetal linkage, we have already discussed that hemiacetal linkage, or in case of keto sugar and hemiketal linkage, they are intramolecular linkages, and because of these linkages the sugar assume a cyclic structure. Now as a result of this cyclic structure, the carbon 1 of the glucose now become again an asymmetric carbon atom. So in cyclic form they have 5 asymmetric carbon atom. Now this carbon number 1 which has now become an asymmetric carbon atom, it is called anomeric carbon. So and on the basis of the position of OH group on this anomeric carbon, what is anomeric carbon? The carbon number 1 of the glucose as a result of hemiacetal linkage is become an asymmetric carbon atom, and it is an anomeric carbon atom. So when we look at the position of the OH group at anomeric carbon atom, if it is above the carbon level of the carbon number 1, it is beta D-glucose, and if it is below the level of the carbon number 1, it is alpha D-glucose. So mutar-rotation actually is the interconversion of the linear form of sugar in solution either to beta or to alpha. It is the interconversion of sugars is called mutar-rotation. So sugar undergo mutar-rotation in solutions, and you can see here the major form of this in solution, it is the beta D-glucopyranose. They assume a 6-member ring structure, and 62% of the sugars are in the form of beta D-glucopyranose form, and only the 38% is in the form of the alpha D-glucopyranose. So alpha and beta anomers is another form of isomerism which is formed as a result of cyclization of the sugar molecules. So and mutar-rotation is the interconversion of this alpha and the beta forms from the linear sugar form in solutions. Simultaneously, like oxidation, sugar can undergo reduction, and when the sugars are reduced, they form sugar alcohols. So you can see the name is indicating sorbitol, mannitol. So we can see here that reduction of fructose can either lead to formation of mannitol, and you are very well aware that mannitol is being used to reduce the cerebral edema, and it may be reduced to sorbitol. And in diabetics, actually the glucose deposited gets deposited into the lens and make it an opaque because of the uncontrolled sugar levels, and the person may develop cataract. So it is the sorbitol which is get deposited in the lens of the eye and make it is opaque and interferes with the vision. Now you can see the glucose, the aldehyde group at carbon number 1. When it is reduced, it forms an alcohol and it is called glucitol. Sorbitol or glucitol, they are the reduced form of the sugars. And in case of diabetes, in case of uncontrolled diabetes mellitus, since the glucose entry into the lens doesn't require the insulin, so it gets deposited over there and leads to the cataract formation. As we were discussing the reducing properties of the sugar, all monosaccharides and the lactose and maltose, in case of disaccharide, they are reducing sugars. Why sucrose is not reducing sugar? Now remember one thing, that the reducing property of the sugar is based on the free functional group. The functional group in case of aldose sugar, it is aldehyde group, and in case of keto sugar, it is the carbonyl carbon or keto group. Now in case of lactose, you can see lactose is made up of one molecule of galactose and one molecule of glucose, and the type of the linkage is formed, that is beta 1,4 linkage, beta 1,4 glycosidic linkage. So you can see this alpha 1, this carbon number 1 of the glucose is free, so it may reduce any molecule with which it reacts. So this is because of this free group, functional group at carbon number 1 of this glucose molecule, it is reducing sugar. Similarly, you can see in case of maltose, it is alpha 1,4 linkage, so the carbon number 1 of this is again free to reduce any of the substance. But here we can see that in case of glucose, the aldehyde group is at carbon number 1 and the functional group of the keto sugar is at carbon number 2. The type of linkage is alpha 1 and beta 2 glycosidic linkage. So both the functional groups of the monosaccharide residues, they are bounded form in the, and there is no free functional group, so sucrose is the non-reducing sugar. Why? Because it has a alpha 1 beta 2 glycosidic linkage. So no functional group, whether the aldehyde or the keto group, is free to reduce the molecule. Now this slide again justify why sucrose is a non-reducing sugar, because here you can see the carbon 1 aldehyde group of the carbon 1 of the glucose and the carbon number 2 of the fructose, they are locked in a cyclic form. So they don't have any free functional group to reduce the compound. A disaccharide is made up of two monosaccharide residues linked by the glycosidic linkage. Now the glycosidic linkages are mainly, they may be alpha or beta glycosidic linkages. You are very well aware that we have, as a result of cyclic structure, we have carbon number 1 as an anomeric carbon atom, and on the basis of OH group, they may be alpha and the beta anomers. So we will discuss this glycosidic linkages, they may be alpha 1,4 linkages, they may be beta 1,4 linkages. And this is the reason why cellulose is a dietary fiber. It cannot be digested by the intestine because it has beta 1,4 linkage, and we human being don't have any enzyme which break the beta 1,4 linkages. Okay, so mainly the this glycogen, starch, they have alpha 1,4 linkages or alpha 1,6 linkages where there is a branch point. In the previous slide, we came to know that the glycosidic linkages can be alpha linkages or can be beta linkages, alpha 1,4 linkages or beta 1,4 linkages. Again, one more important feature of the glycosidic linkage is that glycosidic linkage can be O-glycosidic bond or this may form an N-glycosidic bond. So based on the type of the sugar or the protein molecule with which it formed the linkage, so glycosidic linkages, they may be alpha or beta, or they may be O-glycosidic linkages, or they may be N. Now this slide shows you an example of the N-glycosidic linkage. Now you can see here this is a pentose sugar and this is the carbon number 1 of the pentose sugar. In case of nucleoside, you are very well aware what is a nucleoside. Nucleoside is when a sugar moiety reacts with the nitrogenous base. Okay, so we have carbon 1 of the pentose sugar, ribose, and it interacts with the hydroxyl group of the nitrogen 9 of the purine, or in case of pyrimidine it is the nitrogen 1. So this is the N-glycosidic linkage, because you can see this OH group of the carbon 1 of the sugar and the hydrogen of the N9 of the pyrimidine. It will be removed as a water. So a condensation reaction has been taken place with the elimination of one water molecule, OH group from the sugar moiety and the H hydrogen atom from the nitrogenous base, and you can see a covalent bond is formed, that is the N-glycosidic linkage. This is the N-glycosidic linkage you observe in case of the nucleosides. Nucleosides, they are the condensation of the pentose sugar with the purine nitrogenous bases. Now this is example of maltose, a disaccharide made up of 2 glucose residues, and you can see here this is alpha D glucose. It is alpha because of the OH group at the below the level of the carbon 1, and this is carbon number 4 of the second glucose residue. So this is alpha 1,4 linkage is formed with the elimination of this water molecule, which is being shown with this green bar. And this type of linkage is O-glycosidic linkage. Alpha 1,4 linkage, alpha 1 carbon 1 of the one glucose residue and carbon number 4 of the another glucose residues with the elimination of water molecule. A type of linkage is formed, that is O-glycosidic linkage. So now we have both the examples of N-glycosidic linkage and O-glycosidic linkage. So glycosidic linkages can be alpha, they can be beta, they can be N-glycosidic linkage, or they can be O-glycosidic linkages. This is another reducing disaccharide, lactose, which is commonly called as the milk sugar. And here you can see the galactose and the glucose residues are linked by glycosidic linkage. The carbon 1 of this galactose having the hydroxyl group at beta, it is beta D glucose and it is alpha D glucose. Beta D galactose and alpha D glucose, and the type of linkage is beta 1,4 linkage. Now, as I told you earlier, that cellulose is made up of linked by the beta 1,4 linkages, but the difference is that for lactose we have intestinal enzyme lactase which can break this beta 1,4 linkage. So that's why the lactose can be digested, but the cellulose being non-digestible is being labeled as a dietary fiber. So this is type of beta 1,4 linkages. Now sucrose, you can see here, it is glucose and this is fructose, and you know that very well that the carbonyl carbon of the fructose is at carbon number 2 and the aldehyde group is at carbon number 1 of the glucose. So it is, there's elimination of this water molecule, and the type of linkage is alpha 1 beta 2 glycosidic linkage in case of sucrose, and we know that the functional groups are locked in linkages. So sucrose is a non-reducing sugar. Commonly sucrose is called the inverse sugar, and it is commonly it is called, also called as the table sugar.